Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Bob, for that very kind introduction. It is really good to be here in Montreal with you all. Last fall, I had the pleasure of joining many of you at the summit in Belfast, marking 25 years since the end of the Northern Ireland conflict. Our gathering was a celebration of peace, a reminder that even the bloodiest wars can be brought to a close. But another conflict was weighing heavily on my mind, that between the Palestinians and Israelis. I shared with you my concerns that 57 years into an illegal Israeli occupation, the world had lost interest in the fate of the Palestinian people, that it was taking no action to stop escalating attacks on Palestinian land, rights, and identity. I'm sure some of you wondered what this had to do with you. After all, there's no shortage of global crises vying for your attention. But I felt compelled to highlight this particular conflict because in the occupied Palestinian territories, a new precedent was being set. Israeli annexation of Palestinian land, the blockade of the Gaza Strip, settler attacks on the West Bank, oppression, and injustice were being folded into our world order with great implications for the future you stand to inherit. Still, as I looked out at the summit audience, I couldn't help but feel energized. I said then, hope is a choice. And I dared to believe better choices were on the horizon. 5 days later, on October 7th, Israelis and Palestinians awoke to a horrific new reality. And every day since, hope has become a more difficult choice to make. Today is World Peace Day, and here we are again, gathering on a day dedicated to peace, forced to discuss the reality of war. Bloodshed between Palestinians and Israelis is not new. But the world has been shocked by the scale and nature of the past year's violence. First, on October 7th, in Hamas's attack on Israelis and the taking of hundreds of hostages. And then, for 350 days since, in Israel's indiscriminate military campaign against Palestinians. International humanitarian law prohibits collective punishment. But in Gaza, collective punishment is the strategy. After all, a siege is scarcity by design. Deprive every man, woman, and child of everything needed to sustain life in the hope that famine, disease, and demoralization will lead to defeat. A strategy that is a brutal holdover from wars of past, amplified by modern age weaponry. Like so many around the world, I have watched Gaza's destruction in horror. In January, when the International Court of Justice ordered Israel to prevent acts of genocide in Gaza, 1/3 of all buildings had already been damaged or destroyed. That figure has since doubled. 2 out of every 3 buildings in Gaza are now uninhabitable. Homes, schools, hospitals, mosques, churches, water infrastructure, food warehouses, even orphanages have been targeted. The devastation is compounded by a never-ending stream of Israeli evacuation orders. 9 out of 10 people in Gaza have been displaced at least once, some as many as 10 times. Imagine, nearly 2 million people, more than the city of Montreal, fleeing for their lives with little more than the clothes on their backs and their traumatized children in their arms. Imagine families confined to overflowing tent cities with 24,000 people to every square kilometer and more than 4,000 to a toilet. Gaza has long been described as an open-air prison. Today, it is a suffocating cell. With no water to drink, let alone wash your hands, illness spreads like wildfire. Hepatitis, scabies, even polio, the territory's first case in a quarter century. How can people survive under such harrowing conditions? The short answer is they can't, at least not for long. More than 41,000 Palestinians in Gaza are dead. That figure includes at least 16,000 children. Over 20,000 more cannot be accounted for, lost, detained, buried under the rubble or mass graves. Such suffering shouldn't exist in this day and age. Yet, scenes of mass exodus, starvation, and disease are being transplanted out of history books and onto our Instagram feeds. This war has done more than set the Gaza Strip back generations. It is also dragging the rest of the world back to a level of lawlessness best left to the archives of history. Worse yet, by sanctioning it, by continuing to provide military, economic, and diplomatic cover to Israel, many global powers are sending a chilling message about our future, that this is the shape of wars to come. I said hope is a choice, but in order to hope, people need the freedom to choose. For most of us, our lives are defined by our choices. Each sets us down a slightly different path and helps shape the people we will become. Yet, under Israeli occupation, Palestinians' capacity for choice has been stripped to the bone. In the Gaza Strip, an entire generation has grown up knowing only limitations. After 17 years under military blockade and 12 months under near total siege, they have run out of resources, out of stamina, and out of options. All that remains are impossible choices that only add insult to injury. Do they take refuge in overcrowded, unprotected tent cities, or stay put and risk being killed at home? Do they allow their thirsty children to drink contaminated water, or deny them even that temporary relief? Do they risk their lives retrieving the bodies of loved ones beneath the rubble, or leave them to decay where they fell? When I look at Gaza today, every choice I see is counterfeit. A quick death by bombs and bullets, or a slow one from hunger and disease. No possibilities, only inevitabilities. These are not choices at all. Even outside of Gaza, the Israeli state exerts control over nearly every aspect of Palestinian life. In the West Bank, Palestinians come up against arbitrary restrictions on both the most trivial and consequential of questions: where they can live, which roads they can use, what they can buy, where they can pray. When a population is denied meaningful choices, they are obstructed from meaningful progress. Their political, economic, and social development suffer. Their growth is stunted, their potential suppressed. The Palestinian population is remarkably young. More than 70% of Gazans are under 30. Like all of you, those young men and women seek lives of purpose. But to achieve that, they must be free to chart their own path. Without genuine autonomy, their humanity is diminished, their aspirations kept out of reach.